Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Brown, and welcome to this 31 Days of Wisdom, a journey through the book of Proverbs. Have you ever had your parents tell you something, whether your mom or dad, that just stuck with you? I mean, no matter what you do, it would stick with you. You hear them, you face that situation that they told you about, and you would hear their voice just telling you. And you just couldn't get rid of it, even though you tried. Well, that happened to me with my mom. Growing up in a single-parent home and inner city Milwaukee, Wisconsin, my mom was always adamant of us locking the doors and, when we had cars, not leaving valuables in our car, but just real strict on locking doors and being safe. Even as an adult, she would remind you, lock your door. And no matter where I was. And even though we grew up in inner city Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I went to a suburban school. And honestly, there was less crime out there at the time than it was in our neighborhood. My mom would always say, hey, lock your doors there too, because people steal everywhere. Now, I would hear that sentence, people steal everywhere. And so to this day, if I'm out in some podunk town somewhere, small community, I can be out in the woods somewhere going to a camp and I'm still locking my doors. And people laugh at me because I hear my mama's voice. People steal everywhere. And maybe that was true for you. Well, that's what this book of Proverbs is about. Proverbs is a collection of sayings, of wise sayings. I wrote on the top of my Bible, I heard somebody say this once, a proverb is a short sentence drawn from a long experience. Or another definition of proverb is this. A proverb is a statement that makes a comparison or summarizes a common experience. So in the book of Proverbs, these are things that we hope you can grab onto and that will not let go of you, because you will face these situations, how to deal with people, friendships, enticements to do wrong. Proverbs, even how you conduct yourself, your words you use, even how you work on a job. The book of Proverbs covers so many different topics, and they give you short little sayings or sentences, that comparisons or things that are common experiences that give you wisdom in life that you can move forward. And I believe this. If you would grab a hold, if you would heed, you would learn, you would listen, these are all words used in the book of Proverbs, that these things will protect you, they will guide you, and help you move forward to live a life well lived. That sounded pretty good. To live a life well lived. Like I always say, choose well to live well. So journey with us through this book of Proverbs, 31 Days of Wisdom. Are you ready? Here we go. Proverbs chapter 1. Today is the 1st of January, so we'll go through Proverbs chapter 1. Each day we'll do the proverb of the day. And my family's going through this with us, including Sophia Grace, and we're trying to teach her memory verses. I believe if we teach her young how to be wise, she won't get a whole lot of whoopings like I did growing up. But anyway, we taught her Proverbs 1:5 as a memory verse, and it says this: let the wise hear and increase in learning. And we want her to get that the wise person hears and increases in learning. The rest of that verse says this: and the one who understands obtains guidance. And so the reality is, as we listen and learn from these proverbs, we will increase in our learning and we will gain knowledge. We will gain wisdom and guidance for our lives. So as we go through this book of Proverbs, I hope you will apply some things. Now, as I said in the first video, there's so much to learn from these, and we want to hear from you. So please give us your insight. I'm only able to pick out one or two things from this each chapter and share what my thoughts are, but I want to hear your thoughts as well. So today I sent out the text devotion, and it said this in the text. Let me find it. It said, am I blind? No, I'm not. It's right there. It said, you lose every time you don't fear the Lord. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 and verse 29. And my wife actually pointed this out to me. Now, my desire is each day to actually play through the podcast. Some of you are listening to this. Some of you are watching on YouTube or on our website. But I want to play for you the reading itself. I don't want to read it to you myself because I'm not a great reader, but I use this program called Bible.is in my devotion time many times, or even while getting dressed, is listen to the Bible being spoken, and it's dramatized. So check out the app Bible.is, or go to internet. Bible.is is the web address, and they have some very different versions of the Bible read in dramatization or dramatized ways. And it's pretty good, actually. So I actually emailed them for permission to be able to use it during my podcast, during this series we're doing. So hopefully I hear from them soon, and I'll play it right now. But Proverbs chapter 1, I'm going to focus on two verses, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 and verse 29. And again, this is from my wife, and she's going to join us one day on this. It'll be fun. But Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 says this: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. What does that mean? The fear of the Lord. Now, it doesn't mean that we run around being afraid that God's going to kill us, because some people have a wrong view of God. I have a series I did called Characters of God. Caricatures, not character, caricatures of God. And a lot of people see God as this God in the sky who just wants to hurt you. He's a mean old God ready to step on you anytime you step out of line. And that's not the God we serve. I believe what Solomon meant here was that we'd have a reverence for the Lord, that we would fear and understand he is God and we are not. Because I believe this, how you approach God, how you look at God. Some people call the man upstairs. When I get to heaven, I'm going to tell God a few things. First of all, with that attitude, you won't be seeing God in that sense. You'll be seeing the fierce wrath of God. And so the beginning of knowledge is fearing the one who possesses all things, that God is God and we are not. So if we're to understand anything about the universe that God created, we must approach God in the reverence of God. And not a fear where I'm just afraid he's going to do something, but understanding that God does have a wrath. The Bible says it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of an angry God. The Bible also says that God is consuming fire. So yes, God is that, but we need to approach God in a way of reverence, of fear, and in the sense that we respect wholly who he is. Kind of like me growing up, I respected my granddad. I didn't play games with my granddad. I didn't say smart things to my granddad. We did play once in a while, but we understood that he was granddad. He was reverend. We called him reverend, and we didn't play with him. Well, in a greater sense, I need to approach God that way. He says the beginning of knowledge, Solomon says, is the fear of the Lord. And then he says this, fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And all through the book of Proverbs, we'll be hearing the comparison between the foolish person, and the wise person, because fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now, that verse is so key because when we get down to verse 29, between verses 20 and probably the end of the chapter, wisdom becomes personified. In other words, wisdom takes on a personality. Look at verse 20. Wisdom shouts in the street. She lifts her voice in the square. So from this point, wisdom becomes this female, takes on the personality of a woman. And I kind of jokingly thought to myself, I didn't say it out loud because I was afraid I was getting in trouble, but I'm saying it now anyway, that why would wisdom be compared to this woman? Because you don't ignore women. When women talk, you need to listen to them. If you don't, you get in trouble. So wisdom takes on this idea, if you don't listen to me, there will be consequences. And wisdom projects itself as a woman. And look what it says at verse 29. I thought it was so interesting. And you should read this whole passage, but look at verse 29. Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. And so he said, if you read that, he talks about how when you reject wisdom, all these bad things happen, you lose. But he says, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, all these bad things happen to these people. You got to read that on your own time. But it's so interesting because the beginning of knowledge is the fear of the Lord. It's the beginning of knowledge. And so we have to start there with fearing the Lord. Who is God? And I think the wisest thing we can do in 2014 is figure out, to learn, to search the scriptures, to find out who is this God? Who is God that we serve? Because that is where it all begins. If you choose to ignore God, ignore the fact that God existed, it says in Romans chapter 1, they suppress the truth and ungodliness because they don't want to deal with God. But I think we should approach this year and every day of our lives. I know we're taking a 31-day challenge, but this applies to all of our lives, that we start with the fear of the Lord, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So as you read Proverbs chapter 1, look at all the jewels here, all the pieces of advice and wisdom. And I love to hear what you get from it, because as she talks about the fools and all things they've done, look at verses 8 through 19. It talks about being enticed to go do evil and do wrong. And wisdom says, wisdom is speaking up. Wisdom wants to be heard, because if you apply wisdom to your life, you can live a life well lived. Chapter 1, verse 7 again, I'll leave you with this. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom and instruction. So the question is this: will you choose to be a fool or choose to be wise? It's your choice.